The Rangers did not enter the season expecting to step back. They believed they had already fixed the problem. New coach, familiar core, more depth, internal growth. On paper, this was supposed to be a bounce-back year. Instead, it's exposed a much harder question: whether this roster still has a real contention window or whether New York is drifting into the kind of middle ground that is hardest to escape. The Rangers came into the season with clear intent. After missing the playoffs the year before, this was not framed as the beginning of a rebuild or even a reset. The organization kept its main structure in place, brought in a new coaching staff, and expected the existing core to rebound. The idea was simple: fix the environment, improve the support around the stars, and let the roster reassert itself as a contender. The offseason moves reflected that logic. The Rangers effectively swapped K'Andre Miller for Vladislav Gavrikov, signaling a shift in priorities. Miller offered athletic upside and long-term two-way growth, but came with inconsistency, while Gavrikov brings a more stable, shutdown profile, a clear move from ceiling to certainty in favor of defensive reliability. Moving on from the veteran Chris Kreider created immediate roster space for younger forwards to move up, while opening cap flexibility later in the season. It was a refresh move, shifting opportunity internally without committing to a broader reset. And yet, almost immediately the plan broke down. The team struggled to adapt to the new coach's approach, and it never formed a stable on-ice identity, with injuries to key pieces, first Trocheck and later Fox, compounding the issue. By January, the trajectory was clear. Early results, system misfit, and injuries had already pushed them out of the playoff race. That is where the conversation changed, and where Chris Drury signaled an aggressive retool with a public letter. The most important message involved Artemi Panarin. When an organization tells its main point producer that no extension is coming and asks him to find a new team, that is not normal retool language. That is a much sharper signal. Panarin was not just another veteran, he was still the offensive focal point. Moving him meant the Rangers were at least willing to consider reshaping the top of the roster, not just adjusting around it. At the same time, other names were circulating as well. The Rangers were listening on players who did not have full protection: Trocheck, Lafreniere, Schneider. That tells you the front office was exploring possibilities well beyond cosmetic change. But this is where the Rangers' situation became more complicated. Panarin's full no-move control limited the market. Without the ability to create a real bidding environment, New York sold low. Once the return on the biggest signal trade came in below expectation, it changed the appetite for a wider teardown and disrupted the momentum for a deeper asset liquidation. Trocheck was shopped, but not moved. They still value him, and the price never dropped far enough. Lafreniere was explored, but kept. They're not ready to make a call on him yet. Schneider drew interest but stayed, a young piece they weren't willing to move for futures. Even the deadline reinforced that distinction. The liquidation was limited to expendable pieces like Soucy and Carrick. Those are edge moves, expiring contracts, non-core players. The kind of transactions teams make when they want to recover value without touching the foundation. So, despite the public shift in tone and the Panarin move, the Rangers never fully committed to one path. That may be the most important truth here. They explored a deeper reset, but only if the market made it worthwhile. When it did not, they pivoted back toward preserving the core and retooling around it. And there is a logic to that. Time is not neutral for this roster. The Rangers still have elite pillars in place, especially Zibanejad, Fox and Shesterkin. But the longer a retool takes, the more it risks colliding with the age curve of the players who actually define the franchise. That creates timeline pressure. A deep reset and even a rebuild may be rational in abstract terms, but it is the wrong approach when your best players are already in or near their prime. That is why New York is so unlikely to choose the long road unless forced. The retained core, Zibanejad, Miller, Trocheck, Fox, Shesterkin, Gavrikov, still sits inside a viable competitive window. Around that group is a secondary layer that still offers internal upside. Lafreniere, Perreault, Schneider and Matthew Robertson are obvious development bets. That matters because it means improvement does not have to come entirely from outside the organization. And, unlike most teams, the Rangers also have a unique advantage. New York operates within a different market dynamic. Elite players are willing to sign there, and veterans are willing to waive clauses to come to the Big Apple. That changes the math. With cap space opening up and most key assets still in hand, the Rangers have access to acquisition routes many franchises simply do not. A team in New York does not have to wait for every answer to come through the draft. That is what makes this offseason so important. There is a real opportunity here to compress a multi-year correction into one aggressive summer. Cap space, retained assets, and a favorable UFA and trade market could allow the Rangers to target immediate structural upgrades. Players like John Carlson, Mason Marchment, or Mario Ferraro that can change lineup function instead of just adding name value. And maybe that is what this lost season ultimately became. A development window disguised as a failure. Once the playoff race was effectively over, the coaching staff had room to expand roles for younger players. More responsibility for Lafreniere, Perrault, Schneider, and others is not just a consolation prize. It is now part of the retool plan itself. The Rangers made a choice to keep a still viable core, but that also means they are operating in a narrow, high-pressure window. One season has exposed flaws they now have to solve quickly to keep the contention timeline intact. The key question now becomes this: do they have the time and the conviction to turn this retool into something real? If this made sense to you, you're in the right place. This is iSense.